Have you ever had that feeling, like you could just disappear and nobody would even notice you were gone? The sensation that your presence in a room makes absolutely no difference, that you exist, but you're just not truly seen. If any of this resonates, this video is going to explain exactly why you feel this way. Carl Jung, that brilliant pioneer of psychology, identified 4 major roots of narcissism. We've covered 3 of them already. Today, we're tackling the 4th. And it's possibly the most invisible, the most insidious of them all. It's a cause that happens through what doesn't happen. It's about parents, unknowingly perhaps, making their children feel invisible. This isn't overt abuse. It doesn't leave physical scars. There's no yelling, no hitting, no outright aggression, and that's precisely what makes it so devastating, because the child doesn't have the language, the tools, to name what's happening to them. They can't point to something and say, "This is hurting me," because what hurts is the absence. It's the emptiness. It's the gaze that passes right through them, as if they simply don't exist. I'm going to show you exactly how this happens. And once you understand it, you'll finally grasp why you feel the way you do. So, let's start with what it truly means to be seen. A child needs mirroring. They need someone to look at them and say, whether through words or just through their presence, "I see you, you exist, you matter." This isn't coddling. This isn't a luxury. It's a psychological necessity, as fundamental as food and water. Without mirroring, the self doesn't develop adequately. The child can't form a solid sense of who they are. Jung called this self-mirroring, the process by which a child recognizes themselves through the recognition of another. First, they see themselves reflected in their parents' eyes. Then, they internalize that gaze, and that's how they develop the ability to see themselves as real, as existing, as someone who truly matters. But what happens when that mirroring is absent? When it just isn't there? The child becomes invisible. Not literally, of course, but psychologically. They learn that their existence doesn't register, that their presence has no impact, that they can be in a room full of people and still not exist. So here are the key mechanisms by which parents often unintentionally create invisible children. The first mechanism is passive emotional neglect. The parents are physically there. They feed them, they clothe them, they take them to school, but they aren't truly present. They don't look, they don't ask questions, they aren't interested. The child speaks and they respond with a yeah, without even looking up from their phone. The child shows them something and they say, "That's cool." Without actually seeing it, the child exists in the same space, but doesn't exist in their attention. This is invisibility by omission. It's not that the parents are doing something actively wrong. It's that they aren't doing anything actively right. It's the absence of presence, the void where connection should be. The second mechanism is sibling favoritism. This is particularly devastating. The child sees that their brother or sister is seen, is noticed, is praised, even criticized. At least they exist for the parents. But her? She's the background. She's the one who doesn't cause trouble. She's the one nobody needs to worry about. She's the one who fades away, while all the attention goes to the other child. And the child learns, "I am less. I matter less. My existence is secondary." The third mechanism is parental absorption. Parents who are so absorbed in their own problems that there's simply no room left to truly see their children. It could be work, it could be depression, it could be their own marriage, it could be anything that consumes all the available energy. The child tries to get their attention and encounters a wall, not a wall of anger or rejection, but a wall of absence. The parent's eyes are somewhere else. Their mind is somewhere else. Their heart is somewhere else. And the child learns that their problems aren't important enough. Their joys aren't interesting enough. Their existence isn't significant enough to compete with whatever is occupying their parents' attention. The fourth mechanism is parentification. This might seem like the opposite of invisibility, but it's actually the same thing. The child is seen only to the extent that they serve the parents. They are noticed only when they are taking care of them. They exist only as a function. You're so mature. You're my rock. What would I do without you? It sounds like praise, but it's invisibility in disguise, because the child isn't being seen as a person. They're being seen as a tool, as support, as an extension of their parents' needs. The child's true self remains invisible. What is seen is the function they perform. The fifth mechanism is subtle invalidation. The child expresses something, and the parent responds in a way that erases what was said. You're not really angry. You don't really want that. You don't really feel that way. The child's internal experience is denied. What they feel is declared non-existent. They literally become invisible to themselves because they learn that what happens inside them isn't real. The sixth mechanism is the absence of curiosity. Healthy parents are curious about their children. They want to know what they think, what they feel, what they dream about. They ask genuine questions. They listen to the answers. Parents who create invisible children lack curiosity. They don't ask questions, and if the child offers information, they don't explore it. They don't delve deeper. They don't demonstrate interest. The child learns that their inner world isn't worthy of exploration, that their thoughts aren't interesting, that they aren't fascinating enough to spark curiosity in anyone. Now, let me show you what happens to a child who grows up invisible. They develop one of two survival strategies. Either they shrink or they inflate. The child who shrinks becomes smaller and smaller. They learn not to take up space, not to make noise, not to have needs, to disappear into the corners, to be so small that they don't need to be seen because they barely exist. This child becomes an adult who has difficulty asking for things, difficulty taking up space, difficulty believing that they deserve attention. They continue shrinking, continue disappearing, continue being invisible because they've learned that that's how it should be. It's a type of narcissism that Jung called covert narcissism. The person doesn't think they are special, they think they are insignificant. But the core is the same. A wound in the self, an inability to see oneself as real and valuable. The child who inflates goes in the opposite direction. If no one sees me, I'm going to become impossible to ignore. They become loud, dramatic, exaggerated. They need constant attention. They create crises. They make scenes, anything to be seen, anything to exist. This child becomes an adult with grandiose narcissism. Who needs to be the center of attention? Who can't tolerate being ignored? Who inflates their ego until it's impossible not to notice? It seems like the opposite of covert narcissism, but the root is the same invisible child, the same wound of not having been seen, just different compensation strategies. Jung said that all inflation is a compensation for a void. The grandiose ego isn't a strong ego. It's a fragile defense mechanism and a desperate ego trying to fill the hole left by invisibility. And there's a third strategy that many people develop: oscillation. The person oscillates between shrinking and inflating. In some contexts, they disappear. In others, They need to be the center of attention. In some relationships, they're invisible. In others, they're dramatic. This oscillation is exhausting. The person never finds a point of equilibrium. They never know which version of themselves is going to appear. They live in constant adaptation, trying to find the right strategy for each situation. And deep down, none of the strategies work. Shrinking doesn't solve the pain of being invisible. Inflating doesn't fill the void. Oscillating just wastes energy without healing anything, because the problem isn't the strategy. It's the original wound. It's the child who was never seen, and it's that child who needs healing. Let me show you the specific symptoms of invisibility in adulthood. The first symptom is the difficulty of asking for things. People who grew up feeling invisible have an enormous difficulty asking for anything. Help, attention, support, love. Asking means admitting that they exist. It means taking up space. It means running the risk of being ignored again. So they don't ask. They expect others to guess. They expect others to offer. And when that doesn't happen, they confirm what they already knew. I don't matter. I don't deserve it. I'm invisible. The second symptom is the difficulty of receiving. Even when something is offered, the invisible person has difficulty receiving, because receiving means accepting that they deserve it. It means taking up the space of someone who matters. It means existing enough to be worthy of gifts, of attention, of love. And the deep-seated belief says that this isn't true, so they refuse, minimize, disqualify. You didn't need to do that. It was no big deal. I don't deserve this. The third symptom is imposter syndrome. The invisible person who achieves things can't believe they deserved it, because deep down, they don't even believe they truly exist. How can someone who barely exists deserve success? So they attribute it to luck, to deception, to circumstances, anything but their own competence. Because for them, their own competence would imply their own existence. And existence is exactly what they doubt. The fourth symptom is social hypervigilance. The invisible person is always monitoring. Are others seeing me? Are they paying attention? Am I being ignored? This constant vigilance is exhausting. And it never brings peace, because even when others are paying attention, the doubt remains. Are they really seeing me? Or am I invisible here too? The fifth symptom is the difficulty of having an opinion. Invisible people often don't know what they think. They don't know what they want. They don't know what they feel, because having an opinion means existing. It means taking up space in the world. It means saying, I'm here, and I think this. And for someone who grew up invisible, that's too risky. So they adapt. They agree with others. They don't have strong preferences. They don't defend positions. They continue disappearing, even from themselves. The sixth symptom is difficulty in relationships. Intimacy requires being seen. It requires showing who you really are. It requires taking up space in another person's life. Invisible people either avoid intimacy completely or get lost in it. In the first case, they keep their distance so they don't run the risk of being ignored again. In the second case, they merge so much with the other person that they disappear. They become an extension of their partner. They cease to exist as individuals. Neither option is healthy intimacy. Both are ways to continue being invisible. And there's something even deeper happening. The invisible child develops what I call an existential doubt. They're not sure they exist. Not in a conscious, logical way, but in a deep, visceral way. When you grow up being seen, you know you're real. You feel your own existence as solid, as certain, as unquestionable. When you grow up invisible, there's a fundamental uncertainty. Do I even exist? Am I real? If no one sees me, am I even here? This existential doubt is terrifying, and it makes the person constantly seek external confirmation. They need others to see them, to know they exist. They need attention, to feel like they're real. They need validation, to be sure they haven't disappeared. And it's a dependency that's never satisfied, because external confirmation doesn't heal the internal wound. It's like trying to fill a leaky bucket. No matter how much attention you receive, it drains away. And you need more, and more. And it's never enough. Let me give you a concrete example. A 35-year-old woman named Jennifer came to therapy with a complaint that seemed contradictory. She was successful. She had a presence. She was noticed. But inside, she felt like she didn't exist. "This doesn't make sense," she said. "People see me. I know they see me, but I don't feel seen. I don't feel real." When we investigated her childhood, we found the pattern. A depressed mother who was always somewhere else. A workaholic father who barely showed up. A younger brother with health problems who consumed all the available attention. Jennifer was the perfect child, the one who didn't cause trouble, the one who took care of herself, the one who disappeared into corners while the adults dealt with their crises. No one hit her, no one yelled at her, no one criticized her, but no one saw her either, and she learned to compensate. She became excellent at everything. Perfect grades, a brilliant career, an impeccable appearance, all to be seen, all to exist. But inside, the invisible child was still there, still doubting her own existence, still hoping that someone would finally see her for real. The therapeutic work with her wasn't about external achievements. It was about building an internal sense of existence, about learning to see herself, even when no one is looking, about developing the solidity that should have come from parental mirroring. This took time. Years, in fact, because the wound was deep, because the invisibility had shaped her entire psyche, because she needed to build from scratch, something that should have been given in childhood. But she succeeded. Little by little, she built an internal foundation, a feeling that she existed, independent of being seen, a solidity that didn't depend on external eyes. And something interesting happened. When she stopped desperately needing to be seen, she started to be seen for real, not for the performance, not for the brilliance, but for who she was. Because people feel the desperation. They feel when someone is trying to be seen, instead of simply existing, and they pull away. But when the desperation dissolves, genuine connection becomes possible. Now, the question that matters, is it possible to heal invisibility? Carl Jung said yes, but the path is particular, different from other narcissistic wounds. Have you ever felt invisible, like you could just disappear, and nobody would even notice? It's a horrible feeling. The cure for invisibility doesn't come from being seen by more people. It comes from learning to see yourself. That might sound simple, but for someone who grew up feeling invisible, it's revolutionary. Because the idea that you can see yourself, that your own gaze matters, that you exist even when nobody is looking, that was never taught. According to Carl Jung, the healing journey begins with presence with yourself, moments of being alone and really being there, not distracted, not busy, not running away from yourself, simply present, observing your own experience, recognizing your own existence. For someone who grew up feeling unseen, this can be terrifying at first, because when you're alone, that existential doubt screams, "Do I even exist? Am I real? If no one is seeing me, am I even here?" Sitting with that doubt, without running, that's the beginning of the cure. because little by little you discover that you continue to exist, that your experience continues to be real, that you don't need external witnesses to just be. And remember, this aligns with the work of Carl Jung, who emphasized the importance of individuation and self-discovery in psychological healing. The healing continues with corrective mirroring, finding people who genuinely see you, not people who admire you for your performance, not people who use you as a function, people who look at you and register your existence. These experiences are reparative. They show your brain that mirroring exists, that you can be seen, that your presence can be registered by another human being. Each one of these experiences fills a little bit of the emptiness. Each genuine gaze heals a little bit of the invisibility. But here's a warning. People who grew up feeling invisible often attract people who make them invisible again, because it's familiar, because it's what they know, because deep down they still believe they deserve to be ignored. So, the work of finding people who genuinely see you requires discernment. It requires learning to distinguish between who really sees you and who only uses you. It requires tolerating the discomfort of being truly seen, because at first, it's going to feel strange. And there's a specific pattern that I need to mention. Many invisible people become experts at seeing others. They develop an incredible ability to perceive, to understand, to be present for other people, because that's how they survived in childhood, watching, monitoring, anticipating. This is a gift, a real skill, but it becomes a trap when the person can only exist through seeing others, when they see everyone, but no one sees them back. When they offer mirroring to others, but never receive mirroring for themselves. Drawing upon Jungian psychology, this dynamic often reflects an imbalance in the individual's psychological functions, where the focus on extroverted feeling, understanding others' emotions, overshadows introverted feeling, self-awareness, and valuation. The cure requires inverting this. It requires stopping to only see and starting to be seen. It requires receiving the same presence that you give. It requires balancing the dynamic. And here's a practical exercise that can help every day for 5 minutes. Be alone in silence and say out loud, "I am here, I exist, I am real." It sounds simple, it sounds silly, but for someone who grew up feeling invisible, these words are revolutionary, because the invisible child never heard that, never received the confirmation that they existed. And now, you can give it to yourself. At first, it's going to feel fake. It's going to feel strange. That internal voice is going to say, "This isn't true. You don't matter. You don't really exist." That's the voice of invisibility. It's lying. Keep saying it every day, even when it feels like a lie. Little by little, the lie starts to become the truth. Little by little, that feeling of existence starts to solidify. Another exercise. When you're in a conversation, practice occupying space. Invisible people tend to shrink in conversations, to speak quietly, to withdraw, to let others dominate. The exercise is to deliberately occupy more space, speak a little louder, express an opinion even when you weren't asked, maintain eye contact for a second longer. It's not about dominating, it's about existing. It's about practicing the presence. That was never allowed. And a final exercise. Make a list of moments when you were truly seen. It might be difficult at first. The invisible mind tends to dismiss these moments, but they do exist. Moments when someone really saw you, really recognized you, really registered your existence. Write those moments down. Reread the list when the existential doubt attacks. Use it as evidence against the belief that you're invisible, because that belief is a lie, and the evidence proves it. The healing involves giving mirroring to yourself. This means developing the ability to recognize yourself, to look inward and say, I see you, you exist, you matter. It sounds strange to talk to yourself this way, but it's exactly what's needed. Because the parental voice, that should have said this, didn't. And now, you need to say it to yourself. And the cure requires questioning the belief of insignificance. The invisible child grew up believing that they didn't matter, that their presence didn't make a difference, that they were dispensable. This belief isn't true. It's a conclusion that a child drew from a specific situation. Parents who couldn't see them doesn't mean the child didn't deserve to be seen. Questioning this belief is crucial. Every time the thought, I don't matter, appears, ask yourself, where did this come from? Is this true? Or is it just an old conclusion? What would I do differently? If I believed that I did matter, the healing culminates in what Carl Jung called the solidity of the self, an internal sense of existence that doesn't depend on external confirmation, a foundation that stands even when nobody is looking. This solidity doesn't mean you don't need connection. Humans are relational beings. We need each other. But there's a difference between needing connection and needing confirmation that we even exist. The person with a solid self wants to be seen, but doesn't depend on being seen. They exist before any external witness. They are real, independent of recognition. And for the parents who are watching, if you recognize that you've made your child feel invisible, there's still time, no matter the age. The wound can start to be repaired right now. Look at your child, really, not at the function they perform, not at the grades or achievements, at them, at who they are. Ask genuine questions. Listen to the answers. Demonstrate curiosity. Show that their inner world is worthy of exploration. And if you realize that you can't do this, ask yourself why. Probably you were invisible too. Probably you carry that wound too. And probably you need to heal it in yourself before you can see your child. The cycle of invisibility breaks when someone stops, when someone decides to see, when someone chooses to be truly present. And let me talk about something that happens in the healing process. When you start to become visible, you're going to encounter resistance, not just internal, external too. People who are used to you being invisible are going to find it strange when you start to occupy space. Be prepared for that. It's a sign you're on the right path. Trust Carl Jung when he says the journey of individuation isn't always easy. They're going to resist. They're going to try to push you back into that corner. That doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. It means you're changing an old dynamic. And old dynamics resist change. Some people will adapt. They'll learn to see you. They'll celebrate your existence. Others won't be able to. They'll continue treating you as invisible. They'll keep looking right through you. This is crucial information. Not everyone can see you, and it's not your fault. Some people have their own inability to see, their own wounds that prevent them from registering the existence of others. You don't need to force these people to see you. You can simply accept that they can't, and seek out people who can. And there's one final point I need to make. The invisibility in childhood created a wound, but that wound also created something, a sensitivity, a depth, a capacity to understand what it means to not exist. Many people who grew up invisible become incredibly empathetic, incredibly perceptive, incredibly capable of seeing others, precisely because they know what it's like to not be seen. This doesn't justify the wound. It doesn't make what happened okay, but it's a truth. The pain of invisibility can transform into the capacity to see. And when you heal the wound, that capacity doesn't disappear. It becomes a conscious gift instead of an unconscious compensation. You can choose to see others. You can choose to offer mirroring. You can choose to do for others what wasn't done for you. That's transforming trauma into purpose. That's using the wound as a bridge. That's what Carl Jung called the transmutation of the shadow. The invisible child can become the adult who sees, who heals invisibility in others, who breaks the cycle, not only for themselves, but for everyone around them. That's the hidden potential in the wound. That's the light hidden in the shadow. This video exists because there are people who choose to bring light to familiar shadows. Every minute of content like this requires deep research into Carl Jung, into developmental psychology, into the dynamics of trauma. And doing that while algorithms favor the superficial is not easy. The super thanks button down there isn't just financial support. It's you saying that this truth about invisible children needs to be known. When you click that golden heart, you help other people who grew up unseen to find what you found here. You become part of those who are breaking generational cycles. If you've made it this far, you probably recognize something of yourself in what I said. You probably felt that sensation of having grown up invisible. You probably understood why you have difficulty feeling real. But you are real. You exist. You matter. I know you might not believe that. I know it might sound like just words, but it's true, and the truth doesn't change just because you learned not to see it. Comment down below. What was invisibility like in your house? Who was seen? Who disappeared? Where were you in that dynamic? Naming it is the first step to existing. Which of the mechanisms did you recognize most? Passive emotional neglect, sibling favoritism, parental absorption, parentification, subtle invalidation, lack of curiosity? Write it down below. Because when you name what happened, you start to become visible to yourself. You don't have to continue being invisible. You don't have to continue doubting your own existence. You can build an internal foundation. You can learn to see yourself. You can develop the solidity that should have been given but wasn't. And it starts now, with the choice to recognize your own existence, with the act of saying to yourself, I am here. I am real. I matter. The invisible child is still in you, waiting to be seen, and now you can be the one who finally sees them. You spent years waiting for someone to see you, waiting for someone to confirm your existence, waiting for someone to say, you matter. That wait can end today, because you can be that person. You can be the one who finally sees the child who was never seen. You can be the mirroring that was missing. And when you do that, something extraordinary happens. You stop desperately needing to be seen by others. You start to exist for yourself. You develop the solidity that should have come from your parents, but now comes from you. That's the healing. That's the individuation. That's the end of invisibility. The choice is yours, and it starts now.